So this episode, I wanted to talk about good work strikes. There was something that came up in the news recently when talking to RMT trade union leaders, and they famously work on the trains and the tubes, amongst other things. And it was put to them, why don't you just let people on for free, like it's been done in Japan and other things like that? And it's a really good question. Now, it turns out in this case, that in Britain that's illegal to do, and because of laws that Thatcher passed, there's 3 anti-trade union laws in the 80s that were passed over the course of the decade, which really hamstrung trade union activity. In particular, if trade unions do anything illegal, even if it's like for the benefit of the community and their members, the government controls their bank accounts and can take all of their money, all the money that people put into trade union funds, which is a real shame. It hasn't stopped wildcat strikes, but that's another conversation for another time. So let's talk good work strikes, because what they were talking about is letting people on for free, and that is actually a tactic. It's a tactic called good work strikes, and that's where you actually continue to do your work. In fact, you do good work, but you just don't charge anything for it. So the point of strikes is obviously to cost your boss money. The only way that we can beat our boss is they own our workplace, they own basically our working lives, right? So the only way that we can beat them and make sure that we get better working conditions for ourselves, better lives, we can look after our families, our friends, our communities, have some semblance of rest and respite, and a bunch of other things that we need to win from our bosses, is to take money off them. Now, usually that's by withdrawing your labor, by walking off altogether, getting together and saying, we're walking out, we're not doing any work, and so this is going to cost you a load of cash. And then it's a battle of wills often. How long can the boss go without money, and how long can all of us stay out without money? And that's why we have strike funds and other things. But in the case of a good work strike, you keep going into work. And that's really important for service-based industries or healthcare or other things where you're doing things for people, especially other working class people. You want to look after your own people. And as Mick Lynch, I believe, said from the RMT, they want to do it. They want to provide the services for free, and they're happy to work. They're proud of the work that they do. So we don't want to, you don't want to disrupt people's travel to and from work or to family emergencies or anything like that. They're happy to let people on the trains if they could. And there's other areas where this has been used, and it's particularly useful for healthcare, for service sector like restaurants, bars, things like that. You can just turn up to work, give people stuff for free. It makes everyone very happy, gives people better healthcare, transport, etc., and at the same time costs the boss money and gets them to where they need to be, which is to be ready to negotiate with the workers and actually give them a fair deal.
Please do give an example. I have a couple of questions lined up as well.
Okay, lovely. Well, I think I've got 3 key examples of good work strikes which have helped people out and people not walking off but actually coming into work. So obviously, public transport is a favorite, and that has been done in Japan, Portugal, Brazil, very famously during the Spanish Revolution. Bus drivers just started coming on and not, driving the buses and just not charging people for it. So I think that's a particularly really useful area to look at. But also there have been areas in healthcare. There was a French hospital where the workers came in and just decided to provide healthcare, but not fill any of the requisitions for drug forms or any of the administrative things that create charges for patients. And that cost pharmaceutical companies and consultancy companies and other management organizations a huge amount of money very quickly. And within 3 days, the management came to their senses and came to negotiate and gave in to all of the workers' demands. And finally, McDonald's workers in the US, guided by IWW, which is the Industrial Workers of the World, a quite radical trade union in America, did go into work and wanted to give away things for free, couldn't do that because it would have been illegal and difficult. But instead, what they did was they piled it high. They gave people double helpings, extra servings. So everyone got extra food. You looked after your community, looked after other workers. You gave them extra food for free, and you cost your boss money. So you still came in, did your job, provide the service that everyone wanted, but bosses cost money. And again, this undermined the bosses very much and help with a lot of different, restaurants, not just McDonald's, in winning demands that were wanted.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I guess what you're opening there is the conversation about renegotiation, right, with bosses. And within 3 days, demands were met. But how might we begin to renegotiate that relationship with our bosses, even to begin with? Like the actions are done against and despite our bosses, but how do we begin to publicly own our transport and our work generally? How do you see that transition from, effective good work strike action to then like a long-term solution?
Well, I mean, obviously, that is a massive question. And it's one of those things that we'd love to give simple answers. Beware of simplicity, but also beware of people who overly complicate things and dress it up in complex language. The simplest answer is we will learn by doing good work strikes, by going into work and providing your service for free and starting to take control of your job. You start to realize that actually your bosses aren't necessary. The hospital workers worked this out as well. They actually provided, it was called Mercy Hospital in France. They worked out that they actually provided better healthcare, far better healthcare for their patients, because they weren't doing pointless tasks. Imagine if the American healthcare system, apparently doctors spend about a third of their working hours on the phone to insurance companies filling in claims forms. Like, there's such a waste of an education and a skill that makes people's lives better. And I think if you speak to most people who do a job, you'd be like, my boss doesn't know shit. They're always doing stupid stuff. They're always appointing the wrong people to the wrong positions. We're always understaffed or overstaffed. We're working the wrong shifts. We're doing the wrong things in the wrong way. And what coming together, the process of coming together in a good work strike, a strike, or any other way, and starting to take control of your workspace makes you realize is we know how to do this probably better than our bosses. And more importantly, even if we don't, even if they're really good at being managers, we could provide a lot better for all of us. We could all have more profits. We could also take those profits and invest them into communities, where we've seen places where workers have taken over factories and stuff like that. They've taken the profits and not only given themselves pay raises, but they've built parks, put money into schools, put money into other community businesses, and sort of built the wealth of the community. So what you realize is, oh, that wealth that we generate by doing our work, right, actually could be used way better than the way that this person at the top who owns all our hours can do.
What a wild realization that.
Yeah. Well, it's really important that to stress that we learn by doing. Human beings do. We're like, you can be told not to put your hand in fire, but let's face it, all kids at some point have put their hands too close to a fire, right? Like, that's how we learn. That's what we are as human beings. So we can theoretically say, oh, well, we know that we could run things better, but it's that process of actually doing it, coming together with other people and realizing, oh, human beings are actually pretty good when we come together. We're kind of good problem solvers. We kind of know what we're on about. And actually, we're in this really weird system where we've actually given people control over it in our lives for no apparent reason, not based on kind of skill or value or anything that they do for us or anything else. In fact, quite the opposite. They kind of extract and destroy things. So, yes, what we're talking about, by the way, it largely is cooperatives or worker-owned places. And the cooperative movement has hundreds of millions, I think, it may be over 1 billion. In fact, I've got it up on here. 1.2 billion members. Got a nice poster that showed me that there's 1.2 billion members of cooperatives around the world, and that money generates those are worker-owned businesses, and they're everything from like FC Barcelona and all the fan-owned, well, not all the fan-owned clubs, but many fan-owned clubs in Germany. And there's a bakery, a mass bakery that provides bread for many states in the north of the United States, where they pay their workers around $75,000 a year each, everyone who works on the factory floor. So imagine being a factory worker but pulling home 75 grand a year, right? And they're an incredibly profitable business. Cooperatives are twice as likely to survive the first and second year of startups, because most startups, 50% of startups collapse in the first year and 75% of startups collapse in the second year. And cooperatives do not have that failure rate. There's a lot of benefits to them from a business standpoint, income, wealth generation standpoint, and that they provide for the community. But most importantly, for people like yourself and myself, when we go into work at a co-op, we actually have some control over what we're doing with the majority of our time. We spend most of our time at work doing something, often for someone else, as I say, often for someone who doesn't know what the F they're on about. And it's great to have some semblance of control over your life, because work is still the majority of what you do with your life. And I think that's what we kind of need. So we are talking about cooperatives, but as I say, seems like a big idea, but not only are 1.2 billion people already doing it, but when people strike, do good work strikes, take action, come together, you learn by doing in your workplace or in your communities that actually we could do better than the way it's already being done. And that's the real way that we will all learn how the system can be better. It won't be by ideas on paper, as wonderful as they are and as inspiring as they can be. It will be by us getting together with other people and having a crack.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But I guess another question on my mind is about what a good rail strike would look like, especially given that it's illegal in the UK due to Thatcher, as you said. So yeah, what's required? What are people's roles, practically speaking? How would people have support? Especially given that there's going to reach a point where they're risking the well-being and livelihoods of themselves and the families that rely on them. Would they need pre-existing mutual aid networks? How can it be done effectively? And how can people know that they're supported to do it, by the general public?
Change never comes easy. Nothing good comes easy. So that's the first thing to say. And that's all very well for me to say behind the comfort of a computer screen. And honestly, we never take these things on lightly. Human beings really have to be pushed to an extreme point. And so I think, by the way, that's something always to bear in mind when you see people striking. No one wants to strike, not in especially the numbers that's required to be effective. When 70, 80, 90% of a workforce says, we're not coming into work, that's huge, because that means they're not getting paid. That means they're risking everything, and they're going to be vilified by the media, who are obviously paid for by people who own businesses, not people who work for businesses. So there's a lot of risk involved, and we should never underestimate that. But you've got to ask yourself, what is it that you can do to create a way that these can succeed? What can you the view, and what can we do? And that is, yes, not all of us will be in the workplace, but successful strikes have always had the support of a community. That's people giving money from distances. That's people often acting even in international global solidarity. That's sending money, sending support. Messages of support are surprisingly important to people, because there's nothing more wearing on you to not only be monetarily under siege and at threat, but also to feel like you're alone and no one cares about you. So even messages of support, yes, we need to build community power, not just workplace power. We need to have within the community structures, organizations that can support people as they strike. So that be community centers, that's places that provide energy. We need to start building ways of building community energy. We need to be able to provide food. We need to be able to provide, by the way, music and art and other things. We need our bread and our roses. We need our flowers as well. Like, human beings are not just mechanical food eating monsters. As much as we can be reduced to that, we need something for the soul and the emotions as well. So mutual aid networks is a fancy way of saying helping people and supporting people, and everyone has something that they can bring to those people. That's, as I say, messages, support, love, creativity, which all sounds a bit airy-fairy. It's surprising, as someone who's been through some stuff, it's surprisingly important. And food, money, energy, housing. And these are things that we'll cover in future weeks, like how do we provide solutions to those when we're in a world where it doesn't seem like you can elect someone who will help provide those solutions. Actually, probably you're not going to be able to rely on elections alone, at least, to help us find those solutions.
For sure. For sure. I do remember at one point you mentioning this idea of everyone going on strike at the same time, like key sectors simultaneously having good work strikes, and what that would look like and the impact that would have.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously, again, we'll talk about what a general strike is generally, but because that's a technical term for basically everyone, or huge numbers of the huge sectors all going on strike at the same time. And that's really interesting. But if you had a lot of sectors doing a good work strike, imagine a situation where, and we're coming to it with the cost of living crisis and energy crisis and a bunch of other ones, where energy workers said, well, we're just going to keep pumping out the energy, but we're not going to collect on the fees. And at the same time, rail workers are going in and saying, and tube workers and bus workers are saying, yeah, we're going to go into work and we're just going to drive you around, not collect the fees, because we're all screwed. And food sector workers are going, yeah, you can just come in and take what you like, right? Until there's a solution whereby all of our wages, everyone's wages in society, actually meets these vastly increasing costs of living, which is said about 10%, but is in real terms often a lot more than that. And that's currently, and that could happen at any time. So you just imagine, even in a localized area where a bunch of businesses where all the workers rely on each other all sort of go on a good work strike. So instead of everything shutting down, everything still operates, and it means that everyone in the community, every normal working person, actually gets the things they need and the things that they love, the things that they want, as well as just the things they need, for free. And at the same time, all of our lives are actually better from us going into work instead of worse. And you're putting pressure on the very people who are making our lives worse to make them better. And at some point, they either break, or maybe we just take control and start running things ourselves. Who knows? That's what happens next. It's a great way to try and take power and force the issue. It has its risks. All things, as I say, in terms of creating change, do. There's upsides and downsides, and this wouldn't be done lightly. But you do it from a position of getting people together and getting people on board to at least have a go, to give it a crack, because you know that it'll actually support the very people that you want to support, as well as being a good way to fight the very people that are making our lives worse.
Thank you so much for all your wonderful insight. I've certainly learned a lot today. This has been our first podcast episode for Breathe. Make sure to check out our socials, especially our TikTok, where you can hear directly from our community organisers who are doing incredible work on the ground. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and keep up to date with our future episodes. I'm super excited about the next one on the anti or alter globalization movement. And finally, I wish you all a fantastic week. In love, power and rage from the Breathe Network.